Coming to you from the Hudson Media Group studio, this is Talking Politics. And I am New Jersey's premier award-winning journalist, Top 50 Latino, as voted on by the Latino Spirit Online magazine, along with the United States Latino Affairs Initiative, certainly the weapon of mass disruption in Garden State media. Traffic will tell you, folks, the people's choice and the people's voice, and of course, the most handsome face that runs the place. It's me, Fernando Uribe. Happy December, everyone. As we're wrapping up 2023, a lot to talk about here, as always on the show, because politics never takes a break here with the Hudson Media Group. And of course, let's get right to it. I'll tell you what I'm thinking about right now. Ladies and gentlemen, certainly, and a special thank you to David Wallstein, the editor of the New Jersey Globe, along with John Hines, the editor of the Hudson County View, for breaking the news this week concerning the runoff election in the Miles Square City. Now, let me just give you some details here. Paul Provenzano is now the councilman-elect in Hoboken's 1st Ward, winning the first runoff election in Hoboken since, well, obviously with an unofficial tally of 692 votes to 529 votes. Now, indeed, it was the first runoff election since Peter Camarano defeated Don Zimmer for the mayoral seat in 2009. Thanks to the federal sting, otherwise known as Operation Bid Rig, Zimmer would become the acting mayor about 30 days later when Camarano was arrested on corruption charges. Now, Provenzano lost decisively in the 2021 council-at-large races when he ran on a slate without a mayoral candidate. However, he remained involved on the political scene ever since and announced a first ward council run earlier this year. He took the fight to Mayor Ravi Bala, and rightfully so, and the administration on countless occasions, eventually drawing an opponent in Rafi Cordova, the chair of the Rent Leveling and Stabilization Board. Gee, I wonder where he got that job from, and I wonder who got him there. Oh, that's right, but more on that later. Cordova announced on May 18th, with the support of Bala and former 1st Ward Councilwoman Teresa Castellano, who lost to current local representative Mike DeFusco in 2015. Now, DeFusco announced he wasn't seeking re-election earlier this spring, prompting Cordova to jump in the race shortly thereafter. Now, while Provenzano fell just short of 50% plus one on November 7th, a contest that also included former Health and Human Services Director Leo Pellegrini, who came in a distant third, he had managed to come out on top again this evening. Now, he had the support of Bala's main political adversaries on the council, 2nd Ward Councilwoman Tiffany Fisher, 4th Ward Councilman Ruben Ramos, and 6th Ward Councilwoman Jen Giattino. Now, outgoing Assemblywoman Annette Chaparro from the former 33rd Legislative District, which is obviously included Hoboken at one time, who was thrown off the Democratic Party line by Bala in favor of his law office partner, John Allen, also made late endorsements for Provenzano. Now, the runoff was far more contentious than the vast majority of occurred when the other 5 ward seats were on the line last month during November, with allegations of vote-by-mail fraud, an illegal rent hike at a home owned by Provenzano, and nearly a double-digit rent increase potentially on the horizon for the Marine View Plaza, which houses hundreds and hundreds of Hoboken residents. Now, that didn't seem to hurt the winning candidate's numbers much, if at all, hitting nearly the same number he did a month ago. Now, while Cordova had the backing of Council President Emily Jabor, Councilman-at-Large Joe Quintero, and 5th Ward Councilman Phil Cohen, with Quintero largely leading the charge with Bala at a conference out of the country, he still came up just short. Now, the council will look exactly how it did before November 7th. 4 members in the opposition of the mayor, 4 who are Bala allies, and the wild card being 3rd Ward Councilman Mike Russo, who, I love Mike to death, but he changes allegiances like the wind. So who knows? One month he's supporting Ravi Bala, the next month he isn't. So sometimes Mike isn't the most dependable person, but let me not digress. Although Russo had acted as the swing vote often in the past 2 years, he will likely be less inclined to work with Bala and his administration as he sets his eyes on arguably the mayoral seat in 2025. Now, folks, let me just say this. First and foremost, I want to congratulate Paul Provenzano for his win this week during the runoff election. And let's be very, very honest about what this was, folks. There were the usual amount of dirty tricks and cheap tactics by the Lollipop Guild. And we all know when I reference the Lollipop Guild, I'm referencing Mayor Ravi Bala, along with the rest of the clowns in his brigade. Of course, Emily Jabor, Joe Quintero, and Phil Cohen. And of course, even Vijay Chachuri, who's also involved in city government. But folks, make no mistake about it, Paul was determined. He lost in 2021, and some people would just say, well, I tried, and well, it didn't work out for me. I'll go do something else. That wasn't the case with Paul. Paul stayed involved and engaged in Hoboken politics, talking about the ongoing problems that still, permeate in the Mile Square City, like real problems, not, whether or not the rainbow-colored crosswalks during Pride Month need repainting, or whether or not we need to make sure that drag queen story time can continue at the Hoboken Public Library. No, like real issues that matter to people, folks. Not this virtue signaling nonsense that Ravi Bala and his minions seem to sort of like have a party in their pants about. And we know it all the time. Like, I'm not making this up. You can just check it out on social media. Not just when I roast Ravi Bala and the Clown Brigade with him, but certainly other residents that object to the same things. But now it's time to get to work. And I applaud Paul. I love his attitude. He stuck to the issues. He stuck to the topics that matter most to Hoboken residents. Okay? None of the social justice nonsense, none of the woke idiocy that we see, again, that's becoming much more prevalent in the Mile Square City. Again, thanks to, Ravi Bala and, of course, the rest of his entourage, which, again, include now new Assemblyman-elect John Allen, who, coincidentally, what a surprise, you kick off a dedicated public servant like Annette Chaparro to make sure you get your buddy in there. Yeah, nothing screams like blatant, sexism and misogyny, like kicking out a Latina from the state assembly to put in your white law partner. But remember, Ravi Bala is very progressive, right? Yeah, feed me another one, folks. But I also want to talk about not just congratulating Paul Presenzano, but I also want to talk about the disservice during this runoff election, because it really should be more about Paul. But at times it wasn't. It was about taking shots very openly against still, even though that the new Assemblywoman will be taking office in January, again, as she's outgoing right now, the last few weeks that she has working in Trenton as an Assemblywoman. Folks, let's be fair about who Annette Chaparro is. She has been a dedicated public servant for some years now. Now, let me be very also clear as well, because I'm not trying to talk out of both sides of my mouth. I'm not like Emily Jabor or Phil Cohen or Joe Quintero or Ravi Bala. Like, I have integrity here. Like that 4-syllable word that a lot of people in Hoboken struggle with. Yeah, I don't struggle with that word. But that's a word I can use to describe Annette Chaparro. A woman who worked day and night, tirelessly driving to Trenton, voting on legislation and working. Now, I'll also be clear about something as well. There were many instances I took exception with Annette Chaparro and how she voted on certain things. I wasn't thrilled about giving licenses to illegals, okay? I wasn't thrilled with a lot of the woke stuff going on in Trenton. Now, that's not to say Annette was responsible for that, because she wasn't, okay? And there are a lot of policy positions that she's taken that don't sit well with me. But I've approached Annette Chaparro about that. I've called her, we've spoken on the phone, and I've told her right to her face, listen, there's sometimes I don't agree with what you're doing. I respect you. You're an upstanding woman. You're an upstanding legislator. You're an upstanding person. That's it. And some of the vitriol that she was subjected to during this entire runoff period, I think was downright disgraceful. To say nothing of the fact, again, that Ravi Bala was itching to get rid of her the first moment that he could, and he did. Because for years, when Hoboken was in the 33rd Legislative District, she worked closely with State Senator Brian Stack, the hardest working state senator in New Jersey, folks. Make no mistake about it. His work ethic, his ability to turn out the vote, his ability, again, to be attentive to constituent services. Guess what? Nobody does it better than Brian Stack, and Annette Chaparro worked with him and worked hard for him. And how does she get rewarded by the Democratic Party in Hudson County? Yeah, they allow Ravi Bala to kick her off the ticket. Now, again, nothing against Jessica Ramirez, outstanding lawyer, very accomplished, very upstanding Latina. But for someone like Hoboken, right, you would think, well, let's keep the woman that's there. No, His Royal Highness, Ravi Bala, decides to put in one of his buddies from his law firm, right? And of course, John Allen has other jobs throughout the city of Hoboken, but tell me that wasn't the shadiest of things to do if you're Ravi Bala. So let's reward a hardworking Latina like Annette Chaparro, right, by kicking her off the ticket. Disgraceful, folks. But what do you expect from the Lollipop Guild, right? These are clowns. These are virtue-signaling half-wits that occupy, unfortunately, city government in Hoboken. And like I said, obviously 2024 will be right around the corner. Pride Month will be here before you know it. Listen, if it was up to them, it'd be Pride Month every day and every month in Hoboken. We would be repainting all the crosswalks with rainbow colors if it was up to these clowns. Thankfully, Mayor Bala no longer has a majority of control on the council, and that's a good thing, especially with the win by Paul Presenzano. So congratulations to him. Get to work. Make sure we address the rat problem. Not just the rats in City Hall that work there, obviously, but the rats that obviously are running rampant in businesses and in buildings all throughout Hoboken. Work on rent control. Work on preserving the quality of life for Hoboken residents. Okay? Do that stuff. Don't focus on the virtue signaling nonsense. It's so funny that Ravi Bala obviously isn't in town because he's at a climate change conference in Dubai. Yes, because building more parks and painting more murals is going to, fix the flooding problems in Hoboken. But again, folks, what do you expect from Ravi Bala and the Lollipop Guild? They'd rather open the 20th park in a calendar year than focusing on how to address flooding, how to address the more than 100-year-old pipes that lay underground in Hoboken. So when we see flooding and pipes bursting, well, it's because of irresponsibility. Forget about coddling the LGBT crowd. Forget about, acquiescing to the alphabet mob. Emily, Phil, Joe, and Ravi, do your jobs for God's sakes. And by the way, since Ravi Bala announced he'll be challenging current representative in the 8th Congressional District, Rob Menendez, in next year's primary, I cannot wait to see Rob smoke this fool. I mean, smoke him. And then where does that leave Ravi Bala? What sort of political capital will he have going into 2025 when probably he'll run for mayor again? Folks, I think there's blood in the water politically in Hoboken. I think a lot of sharks are going to be sort of neighboring the carcass. I think Ravi Bala's days are numbered in the city of Hoboken. Let's all hope so. Let's hope that the rest of the Lollipop Guild, their days are numbered too. And that's what I'm thinking about right now. And I have some local stories for your consideration. And folks, it seems like it's Civil War time within the Hudson County Democratic Organization. Special thank you to John Hines, the editor of the Hudson County View, for his reporting on this really, really exciting saga here. Now, earlier this week, Jersey City Mayor and Democrat primary candidate for 2025 for governor, Stephen Fulop, came out this week and said he will not be supporting U.S. Representative Rob Menendez for re-election, claiming, quote, it's time to move on due to his father's federal corruption charges. Now, it was a really interesting back and forth war on Twitter this week, folks. So again, if you haven't read it, just go to Stephen Fulop's Twitter and Rob Menendez's Twitter and get a bucket of popcorn ready because you're going to be entertained. So he starts saying, quote, I'm not on board with supporting Rob Menendez for another term in Congress. It's time to move on. When the senator first got indicted, I thought maybe I could separate the father and the son. And I even expressed that to Rob, who right now, obviously, Fulop is the only declared candidate for governor. As time went on, I realized it is impossible to do that, and the situations are tied together. It's not a secret that Rob got to Congress only because of his dad's influence, so it's fair to move on from Rob now because of that same influence. Now, this decision puts Fulop on the opposite side of the Hudson County Democratic Organization, who earlier in the week endorsed Rob Menendez for re-election coming up in 2024, specifically with 10 mayors and Hudson County Executive-elect Craig Guy also being on board. Now, Hoboken Mayor Ravi Bala, who is expected to run against Rob Menendez in the June 4th primary in 2024, is the only other mayor who has joined Fulop in not signing on. Now, they both endorsed Rob Menendez in 2022, and the HCDO has already backed Fulop for governor, as well as Tammy Murphy, unfortunately, Governor Murphy's wife, for the U.S. Senate race next year. In response, the freshman congressman showed he's ready and willing to engage in the sort of nature that is Hudson County power politics. Now, Rob responded on Twitter saying, quote, with respect to Steve, he has been running for governor unsuccessfully since he has been elected mayor in 2013, always at the expense of Jersey City residents. Steve's absence from the city, whether spending time at his Rhode Island mansion, preventing people from accessing the beach, or traveling the state for his own political ambition has led to a housing affordability crisis, a broken budget, and 911 calls that go unanswered. Steve Phillip is right that it's time to move on. Time to move on from his failed leadership in Jersey City. Now, their exchange continued on social media for some days, with Phillip accusing Representative Menendez of having his father write the, quote, silly response, which is a sign of a desperate man, quote, heading to spend the rest of his life in prison. To that, Representative Menendez said, quote, it seems like someone calling you out on your policy failures makes you more mad than the surfers outside your Rhode Island estate. Now, Phillip's icy relationship with Senator Menendez is well documented, dating back to 2017, after the latter's first corruption trial ended in a hung jury. Quote, to those who are digging my political grave so they could jump into my seat, I know who you are, and I won't forget you. Bob Menendez said at that time the remarks widely were viewed to be directed at Stephen Phillip. Now, expectantly, though, Phillip was one of the first to come out and call for Bob Menendez to resign, as well as Hoboken Mayor Ravi Bala, after being accused of accepting cash, a car for his wife, and gold bars, among other things, in exchange for his political influence. After a superseding federal indictment accused New Jersey senior senator of acting as a foreign agent also to the government of Egypt, Phillip said in an interview recently with the Hudson County View that the Senate should expel him. Now, folks, I look forward to talking with Jersey City Mayor Stephen Phillip coming up in January on my show via Jersey First TV on Real Talk with Fernando Uribe. By the way, you can sort of mark on your calendars for Monday night, January the 15th. I look forward to that interview with Stephen Phillip. And of course, I've also reached out to U.S. Representative Ron Menendez for the new year as far as it comes to new scheduling and new guests. Folks, I got to tell you, when I started reading this, I started making some calls, and my phone was blowing up this week as well with text messages, voicemails like, Fernando, what's going on here? Talk to me. You know, what's the scoop here? I'll tell you what the scoop is. There's some heat here, and the heat isn't going away. And it would seem that Stephen Phillip, for reasons only known to Steve, decided to pick this fight with Rob Menendez earlier this week. Now, folks, I've talked about Rob's father on this show previously, and again, I'm not an attorney, but I remember taking some constitutional law classes during grad school, and I remember somewhere reading about the Bill of Rights that there is, again, the right to counsel, that there's a right to a jury of your peers, that you have a right to a jury by, a trial by jury. And of course, folks, like everything else, we're entitled to due process. We're entitled to not incriminate ourselves. We're entitled to make sure that we're not deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process. And that's what Bob Menendez has coming up next year. Now, the preliminary start date for his trial is in May, approximately 1 month before the June 4th primary. Now, we'll see what happens with Bob Menendez. He's not stepping down. He has not indicated whatsoever that he will not be seeking another term. He seems to be on board with doing that in 2024. Now, again, we'll see how the process plays itself out, like anything else. But, folks, if we believe in due process, we have to believe in it for everybody. Because it seems like many on the left are foaming at the mouth about already sort of convicting the 45th president of the United States in the court of public opinion before that happens, if it does happen, which highly unlikely, if it happens in a court of law. Well, if the 45th president is entitled to due process, then guess what, folks? We have to be consistent here. Okay? We have to be philosophically consistent and intellectually honest. Senator Bob Menendez is also entitled to the presumption of innocence before being declared guilty. Now, I get it. You read the indictment. If you watch that statement in that press conference by the U.S. attorney, I mean, it looks really, really incriminating. But again, that's why we go to court. That's why you hire lawyers, and that's why you battle it out in a courtroom. The U.S. attorneys, the prosecution will present their case, and certainly Senator Menendez's attorneys will present theirs. And a jury will make a decision, just like they did in 2017. Now, folks, I'll also say this. There are a lot of people that were skeptical about what happened in 2017. But again, if you cannot prove, guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, then that's our system. Okay? That's why hung juries exist. And if a jury cannot come to a conclusion after looking at all the evidence, then so be it. And that's what happened. Now, Many people privately spoke to me and said, I can't believe Bob got out of this. I can't believe he won. Well, he's not going to win this time. All right, we'll see. What I will say, though, is Bob's a fighter. He's Cuban. I know a little something about that. And he's going to fight tooth and nail when he goes to court. He's been a good United States senator. Certainly some policy positions he's taken that I don't agree with, but I know Bob Menendez personally. Not just like I know him because I ran into him at a political event. Like, I know Bob. I could call Bob on his cell phone and he'll take my call. Like, I have that sort of rapport with Bob Menendez. He's a good man. Okay? Did he make some poor choices? It seems like that's the case. But again, when we get to court, that'll all be disputed again and discussed between the prosecution and the defense in front of a jury. But in the meantime, why Stephen Fulop picked this fight, I'll never know. And a lot of people are also wondering the same thing. Because again, while the HCDO endorsed Stephen Fulop for governor, they also endorsed Bob's son, Rob Menendez, for the U.S. House of Representatives. Now, let me say this. I've interviewed Rob on multiple occasions, and Rob is a good freshman representative in the House. Are there some policies maybe I don't agree with or some positions he's taken? Sure. And I can call him, and we're adults, and we can have a conversation. And guess what? We can agree or disagree like men and not take it personally. But he's worked hard in the district. He's addressed constituent concerns promptly. He's worked with local mayors, specifically my mayor and State Senator Brian Stack. He's worked hard and he's earned re-election. His colleague, Josh Gottheimer, next door in Bergen County, also endorsed Rob Menendez. I'll say this, folks. Someone like Ravi Bala, the only thing he should ever be near when it comes to a congressional House seat is walking by the office and maybe picking up a pen or a napkin. But he doesn't deserve to be anywhere near a House seat. And hopefully, Rob Menendez smokes him in next year's primary. But having said that, let's get back to Stephen Fulop and the ongoing, animosity that exists between him and the Menendez family. Folks, this isn't going away anytime soon. And we're just getting started right now in what most likely will be a very juicy 2024 election season. Yeah, we all know the presidency is on the line, and we all know what a disaster Joe Biden's been. And we'll see exactly if the 45th president can unseat him in potentially what will be a rematch later on next year. But all 435 House seats are up for grabs, and a good majority of Senate seats are up for grabs. So let's keep the House red, obviously, right? Let's turn the Senate red, and let's get the White House red. But at a local level, hey, I don't have any qualms, and I don't have any reservations about Rob Menendez. Does he deserve re-election? Certainly. He's worked hard at it. Despite what Stephen Fulop may say, he's entitled to his opinion. But again, it's in the real world, listen, it's his dad. He's not going to throw his dad under the bus. No good son would. And I don't expect Rob Menendez to do that either in this case. We'll see what happens. But folks, stay tuned because this war between Rob Menendez and Stephen Fulop isn't going away anytime soon. Lastly, ladies and gentlemen, as I mentioned earlier, 2024 is a very crucial election year, arguably the most important election in my adult life, I would say. Are we a country that wants to continue going down this awful path with inflation still being a problem, gas prices still being high, food prices that make it more difficult to celebrate Thanksgiving in an affordable way? And folks, let's not even forget about Christmas. Christmas dinner is going to be expensive too. But the idea that we're not respected in the world, the idea that we're being looked at as jokes with this clown of a president in the White House, and the even bigger clown of a vice president, that should tell you all you need to know. Now, folks, I'll be very, very clear about it. I certainly have my issues with the 45th president. There are times that he has lacked decorum and has not been very presidential. But there's an element about him that, appeals to a lot of everyday people. He speaks from the hip, shoots whenever he can, and really doesn't have a filter. Now, a lot of people respect that. And let's be honest, it would be the height of hypocrisy for me to talk about anyone else not having a filter. But having said that, folks, in 2024, we have a serious decision to make. Not just in keeping the House, but making sure that Republicans win the Senate and make sure that we can get, any retirements coming up in the U.S. Supreme Court, that we can keep the 6-3 constructionist majority that we have right now in the Supreme Court. Because I've enjoyed their decisions lately. Have I enjoyed the Dobbs decision? Absolutely. Relegate it to the states and let states make their own decisions when it comes to reproductive rights. When it comes to the Second Amendment, we've seen what happened in New York, and obviously the Supreme Court, sided with law-abiding Americans and law-abiding responsible gun owners. when it comes to slicing into affirmative action. We've all seen the harm that it's done. Thankfully, the Supreme Court ruled on that. And even with religious freedom. Now, folks, listen, I'm someone that respects people who are LGBTQ. That's fine. That's your life. That's, not necessarily your prerogative. That's how you're born, and so be it. Maybe not necessarily like T, because I think transgender people, are mentally ill, but that's a topic for another day. But I have people that belong to that community. Okay? I don't condemn them. I don't think harshly on them. But there are people along religious lines that do. Not just Christians, folks. Jews, Muslims are equally guilty of it. Okay? And if a website designer chooses to not design a wedding website for a same-sex couple, well, that was her prerogative. And that was at its core the premise of her legal argument before the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court sided with religious freedom. Now, again, for someone that is not overly religious, okay, that's fine. But guess what? I do respect people's religious practices for the most part. Okay? And if that's how they want to view homosexuality, then that's their prerogative. Sorry. Okay? Who am I to call them anything? They can easily turn around and call me, I don't know, someone who lacks faith or someone who isn't a good practicing Christian or anything else, which I'm not. I'm very spiritual. I'm not the most devoted Catholic or Christian, but again, I worship in my own way, and you worship in your way. And if that means not serving a specific community, then based on your religious preference, then that's your right, and that's what the Supreme Court decided on, among other important cases. That's why coming up in 2024, folks, it's so crucial, again, to vote Republican, to make sure that we get Joe Biden out of the White House, that we get Secretary Mayorkas out of the Department of Homeland Security, to make sure we don't have to look at Attorney General Merrick Garland anymore. And we get people who respect the Constitution, that respect the law, unlike the clown show that we've had in the White House since January of 2021. Again, folks, get informed, read up, tell your friends, make sure they read up as well, because 2024 arguably is going to be the most important election of our lifetime. And that's our show for this week. Once again, to check out all the excellent content brought to you by the leader in independent media right here in Hudson County, the Hudson Media Group, please go to their websites, www.hmgtvshows.com, along with www.livestream.com/hmgtv. Don't forget to like the Hudson Media Group on Facebook, and of course, follow them on Instagram and Twitter. Don't forget to follow me as well on Instagram and Twitter. And make sure you like Talking Politics with Fernando Uribe on Facebook as well. Folks, brand new episodes of the 7-time award-winning Talking the Hudson will resume in early 2024, so you definitely want to stay tuned for that. And of course, you can check out current episodes available by going to blogtalkradio.com/talkingthehudson. Folks, we'll continue talking politics here for the rest of 2023 and well into 2024. And always remember, if it's unbiased, unfiltered, and unafraid, it is always talking politics right here with the Hudson Media Group. I am New Jersey's premier award-winning journalist, Top 50 Latino, as voted on by the Latino Spirit online magazine, along with the United States Latino Affairs Initiative. Certainly, I'll still be the weapon of mass disruption in Garden State media. Folks, the traffic will tell you, people's choice and the people's voice, and without a doubt, the most handsome face that runs the place. It's me, Fernando Uribe. Once again, folks, happy December to you all. Please stay safe out there. Again, always please party responsibly. Be safe shopping out there during this Christmas holiday season. Always remember, folks, take care of yourselves. And we'll see you next time here on the Hudson Media Group with the latest edition of Talking Politics with Fernando Uribe. And thanks for stopping by.